Hello everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. Today we join you from the Big 3 Field Days in Stillwater, where every summer young people from around the state get together to learn about livestock judging. If it looks crowded, that's because it is. 1,500 students per day pack into Oklahoma State University's Animal Science Arena. Over the past 29 years, this has become the place to go for both the experienced and those just starting out.
There are people that come from Georgia, from Maryland, that compete for the overall sweepstakes. But there's also 8-year-olds out there where you have a competition where at this one, we're not talking oral reasons. So we have probably a little more of an informal setting where kids can come for the first time and really be a part of a judging contest with a little less pressure, kind of get their feet wet, and enjoy it. And then that really brings them into a culture of livestock judging that we enjoy in the state of Oklahoma. And I think some of that is due to field days where they got to be a part of it. It wasn't scary, it was fun, and they learned something. And so not only do we have the competition here this morning, but we also have, immediately after, they can go through with their coaches and go look at all these classes and talk about them and really go through the priority traits and talk about selection and evaluation with their coaches on a one-to-one basis. Might be as valuable a thing as we do during the whole week. It's here to be taken for whoever wants to, as much as they want to. They can just come for the morning and go home, or they can jump in and attend things all day long.
We thought we would include you in this week's lessons with a look at some of the key characteristics for each of these Big 3 species. Let's start with a look at sheep.
As we start looking at selecting breeding sheep to use in our clubland production these days, we look at things as far as muscle, body shape, some skeletal width, along with some balance and some skeletal correctness, and as always, size is extremely important even still today. So as we study this ewe, we find one that is extremely good in terms of her top shape and her body shape. She's really productive in terms of the turn to her rib. We look at her from behind, she's extremely wide in terms of her pin set. She has a lot of shape to her lower stifle and her inner leg. But as we study her from the side, we look at her and she's good and shallow and clean in terms of her chest floor. She's really smooth up through her front 1/3 and she ties in good at the top of her neck. She's fairly level in terms of her top line, and from her hooks to her pin, she's really level hipped, okay? In terms of her skeleton, she's one that I deem certainly acceptable. She's good in the angle to her shoulder. She's got some curvature to her knee. And as we look at her from her last rib back, she's good in terms of the levelness to her hip, and she's correct in terms of the set to her hind leg. She's one who'd be able to go out and forage, and as you can see, she's plenty fat in terms of her condition, and she's one that's been able to go out on pasture and do a nice job maintaining body weight, and has done a nice job growing into certainly a very high quality yearling ewe.
I'm Al Sutherland with your Mesonet weather report. Rain days are a time when farmers and ranchers can ease off the throttle and think about the big picture. Mid-July puts us close to the halfway mark for the summer's heat in Oklahoma and our summer growing season. And as years go, this one has been mild so far. A map showing the number of days when the air temperature has hit or gone above 100 degrees has a lot of cream-colored areas. These light areas are those with 2 or fewer 100-degree or higher days. I-35 generally divides the state for peak air temperatures. East of I-35, a lot of Mesonet sites have not hit 100 yet this summer. West of I-35, it really varies, from a few locations with only 1 day so far up to those with 12 days at 100 or higher, Altus and Tipton. Checking in on the number of days that have hit 90 degrees or higher across the state, the top count is again at Altus with 56 days at or above 90 degrees. On the cool side, Jay and Westville Mesonet sites in the northeast have only had 4 days at or above 90 degrees. Another way to look at heat is with the Mesonet degree day heat unit calculators for agronomic crops. Checking on the degree day heat units for cotton through Wednesday, July 16th, we can get an idea of the differences from north to south. Blackwell was at 978, Minco 1,004, Altus 1,232. Depending on the variety, cotton is ready to harvest between 2,200 and 2,600 heat units. So Altus cotton was a little over halfway to harvest. Minco and Blackwell were under the halfway mark. Checking on Oklahoma's rainfall from mid-May through Wednesday, July 16th, the majority of the state has had 8 or more inches of rain. These are the red and dark red areas on the map. The highest amount was 14.5 inches at Porter in eastern Oklahoma. 8 inches or more since mid-May has been enough to meet the water demand of our hay, pasture, and summer crops. And this map does not include the rains since Wednesday. The percent of plant available water from the surface down to 16 inches shows how the soils in areas with higher rainfall, those colored dark green, have close to 80% or more of the total plant available water they can hold. That is great for mid-July and should be enough water to finish out the warm season crops. The areas that have low plant available water from the surface to 16 inches are those soils in the brown colored areas. These soils have only 20% or less. Hopefully our latest rains will replenish these drier soil areas. It will take a couple of days for that water to move into the deeper soil depths. Thanks for joining us for this edition of the Mesonet Weather Report.
It's not every day you get a grain marketing specialist at a pig show, so we have Kim Anderson here with us. Now, Kim, we're at the Big Three. You and I are talking wheat. Wheat prices are down about $1, $1.50 from where they were a month ago. What's the situation?
Well, if you looked at KC September wheat contract all week, ever since the WASDE report was released, it's been pounding against that $6.38 support price. It's went below it a little bit, but it hasn't broken through. Next week, if it breaks through, we may have a problem. But if you look at what's going on, the USDA report came out the week before last on that WASDE. If you look at hard red winter wheat, that looks positive price-wise. I mean, ending stocks 185 million bushels, 5-year average 337 million, last year 235. As you can see, ending stocks for hard red winter wheat are low and hard red winter wheat stocks are tight. But if you look at the U.S. wheat situation, all other classes, essentially your hard red spring, your soft red winter, are all above average on ending stocks. Your U.S. at 660 million bushels, 5-year average at 770. Foreign wheat, above average ending stocks, 6.3 billion bushels, 6.25 billion for the 5-year average.
So what does this mean from a world standpoint?
Well, if you look at our exporters, the major exporters, Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Argentina, Australia, all of their stocks are projected to increase this year, and essentially all of them but one are going to end up the year with above average ending stocks. Those countries can take over our exports and reduce even maybe the projected relatively low export expectations for the hard red winter wheat for the U.S.
And when we talked earlier in the season, we talked about quality may play a role in that. Has that really happened?
Well, if you look at protein as quality, I talked to one miller and he said protein may average 14%. The catch-22 or the problem is that it's too high for a good milling, bread milling quality product. And he said that they've got about 60 to 90 days supply, and in that time period they're going to have to figure out how to handle this high protein wheat. They may have to blend it maybe with lower protein soft red winter wheat, or find some lower hard red winter wheat proteins. You know, the hard red winter wheat protein may be as high as the hard spring wheats protein, and that can substitute. We talked about the foreign crops, but that hard red spring can substitute for our hard red winter wheat in certain mills of where you would have a transportation advantage. Negative for hard red winter wheat prices.
Kim, that's a lot of information. Can you kind of summarize that for us?
Yeah, if you're looking at summarizing all this information, we've got the KC September contract at its resistance point. If it breaks it, it's going to go down another 30, 35 cents. If it breaks $6, it's KD bar the door. Hard red winter wheat stocks are tight. You think that'd be positive price-wise, and it is. However, your other classes of wheat are above average and can substitute for hard red to a certain degree. The hard red spring, the soft red winters, you've got your foreign wheat, Australia, Argentina, Kazakhstan, Russia, those that can take our exports away from us, and all that will result in us having higher ending stocks, and voila, lower prices.
What does all that mean for the Oklahoma farmer?
That means, remember a month ago we said now's a good time to sell wheat, and it was. It's nice to be right once in a while, but what it means is they've got a very difficult decision. Can they afford another 35, 40 cents lower price? Can they afford to take that risk in hopes that something will happen to the Argentine or Australian crop and our prices recover? It's at best a 50-50 shot right now, and so they've got very difficult decisions, and if they can't take the risk, then they at least need to sell some of their wheat.
If it's hard to sleep at night, sell.
That's correct.
Okay. Kim Anderson, grain marketing specialist here at Oklahoma State University at the Animal Science Big 3 this time. Thanks for coming out.
When we evaluate swine here at the OSU Big 3 Field Days, first off, we're looking at market hogs and also breeding gilts to evaluate for. And first off, in the market hog deal, the kids that are evaluating the hogs and looking at hogs, we're looking for animals that have got product to them, as far as muscling down their top and muscling and thickness out of their hips. And then we're looking for growth characteristics. We want hogs that'll grow fast for us so we can get them to market and get our product and to harvest those hogs in a faster attempt there. And then we're also looking for soundness and structure ability as far as getting hogs that are flexible and easygoing and be able to walk and get around so they're able to get to feed, so they'll grow faster, so they'll have more product to them in the end point. And another thing we're looking for is some body type, some depth of body, some rib shape, some flank to them, some cover, and the right amount of condition, the right amount of fat cover to these market hogs. Those the three main characteristics that we're looking for are the muscling, the growth, and the right amount of condition when we look at market hogs. When we go to breeding gilts, the breeding gilts structure is the best, the number one key that we're looking for in breeding gilts. Breeding gilts, the reason why we're wanting good structured gilts is those gilts are gilts that we got to have longer than what market hogs are, because market hogs, we get rid of them and harvest them from 240 pounds to 280 pounds. In breeding gilts, those gilts are going to go on at a heavier weights, so bigger, and those could be 3 years old, 4 years old time we get rid of them, and they got to be able to live and have more longevity as far as a sow and having pigs and more litters for us. So that's why structural correctness is more of an important deal in breeding gilts, and having more flexible and more cushion in their pasterns. And as far as muscling in a breeding gilt, we just want a good pattern kind of a muscle, not as much thickness as what we do in market hogs, and just a good, nice kind of a muscling in a breeding gilt. Breeding gilts do genetically pass on to the market hogs, so we still have to have muscle in them, but it's not quite as much as what we do. The body content, we really look at that body content in breeding gilts as far as how much rib shape they have, how much flank they have. They got to have that capacity to hold them babies in them for later on when we go ahead and breed those gilts. Then we got to have some femininity appearances to those gilts, as far as extension up through their front end, good underlying texture and quality of their underlines, good vulvas to them gilts, because that's a key part to a breeding gilt. They're females, they got to be able to breed, they got to be able to milk their babies, and so as far as the breeding gilt, overall soundness, good femininity, really a big volume, big capacity kind of gilt, and it still has the muscle product that she needs to have. And market hogs and breeding gilts that still got to balance up and put everything together in a good kind of a package.
Joining us now to talk about crop insurance, our ag policy specialist, Jody Campeacci. Jody, I understand you have some good news for canola producers this morning.
Yes, crop insurance has now been approved for 5 more Oklahoma counties for canola crop insurance as of the 2014 year.
So what will that mean for producers in those counties?
Well, in the past, and we still have some counties that this would be the case for, but producers have to submit written agreements, and it's kind of a time-consuming process. They have to do it early, and there's not a guarantee that crop insurance would actually be approved for that county. With the new crop insurance programs for canola in those 5 counties, there's just an automatic crop insurance program. Producers can go in and sign up for it, just like they would for other crop insurance.
So much easier then.
Much easier.
All right, so now with this new farm bill, are we expecting anything new this fall in terms of crop insurance?
Yes, we are. With the fall planted crops, and specifically for wheat, we have a new crop insurance program called the Supplemental Coverage Option, or SCO, and it's designed to kind of sit on top of a producer's individual policy. Now, what the current plan is that it's going to be available in September of this year for some counties. However, the Risk Management Agency hasn't released any of the rules or regulations yet, so a bit of it's still kind of up in the air given that it's the middle of July.
Jody, tell me about the dates we need to be aware of in terms of crop insurance this fall.
Okay, for canola crop insurance, we'll start with that. For counties with a written agreement still that don't have an actual crop insurance policy in place, the deadline is July 31st. For those counties with a crop insurance plan in place, the deadline is September 2nd, again for canola. For fall planted crops, and this would include wheat, the deadline is September 30th, and that's the deadline that many producers in our state will need to meet.
All right, Jody Campeacci, Ag Policy Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
We've spoken before on the Cow-Calf Corner about the concept of using Oklahoma Gold, which is a high-protein supplement program for light cattle as summer pastures get more mature. In particular, we'd like to emphasize the use of that with fall-born replacement heifers that are weaned in midsummer and are going to be raised to where they're big enough to go into their first breeding season in mid to late November. Research here at Oklahoma State University has looked at combining that concept of the high-protein supplement in a small package with deworming those heifers in late summer. And I think the results were rather surprising. What they did, they took a set of heifers, and 1/4 of the heifers got neither dewormed nor got the supplement. 1/4 of the heifers got dewormed but no supplement. Another group got the supplement but did not get dewormed, and then of course the last group was both dewormed and given the protein supplement so that they could look at all the possibilities. What they found was that those 2 management practices, giving an equivalent of 1 pound of a high protein supplement per head per day and deworming in late summer, were additive. They got about 1/2 pound additional average daily gain by using the protein supplement. Another 0.29 pounds per head per day if they dewormed. And the combination of the two didn't quite get the total addition of those 2 sums, but they got 0.76 additional pounds of average daily gain by combining those 2 management practices, and that amounts to over 60 pounds of added weight at the time those heifers went into their first breeding season. Another interesting aspect of this was that as they followed those heifers through the winter program, the deworming weight gain was sustained. In other words, those heifers that got dewormed maintained their advantage in terms of added weight gain as compared to those that didn't. So as we're going into the last part of summer, if you've got some fall-born replacement heifers that you're going to breed for the first time this fall, I would really consider using that Oklahoma Gold supplement program and deworming those heifers in late summer so that you've got the most additional gain on those heifers to where you have the highest percentage of them cycling and ready to breed at the start of the breeding season in November and December. Hey, we look forward to visiting with you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
We caught up with Sarah Seams here at the Big 3 Field Days to talk about another upcoming event, the Women in Ag and Small Business Statewide Conference. And Sarah, for those who haven't been before or want to know a little bit more about this year's event, tell us a little bit about it.
Sure, thanks Lyndall. Our conference will be August 7th and 8th at the Moore Norman Tech Center in Oklahoma City. It's a day-and-a-half conference, and we have topics for any female producer in Oklahoma that's interested. We have traditional agriculture topics, we have alternative enterprises topics, we also have business and finance.
So kind of any track you're covering the gamut there in terms of topics. Tell us a little bit about your guest speakers that you have on the agenda this year.
Yes, we have 2 keynote speakers this year. We have Jane Jenkins Herlong from South Carolina. She grew up in a tomato farm and is now a professional speaker, and also has a book that she has out. We also have Matt Rush from New Mexico, and he does a lot with leadership training and motivational speaking as well. So I think the women will really get a lot out of the 2 days.
And part of it, of course, is the interacting with other small business women, their peers from across the state, and part of it is the mini mall that you have set up and some of that interaction as well. Tell us about that.
Right, so I think one of the probably favorite things as these women get out of the 2 days is just really networking and meeting other women producers from around the state. We do have a mini mall that will feature made in Oklahoma products. So if the ladies want to pick up something for themselves or someone else while they're there, they have the opportunity to do that, and we can just kind of showcase other Oklahoma businesses during the conference.
And then another topic that we've talked a lot about on SUNUP and that I know that you've addressed in past conferences is this topic of farm transitions, and you're going to address that at the conference a little more in depth, or sort of post-conference, the way I understand that.
Right, so we'll have a post-conference training, and there's been a farm transition workshop that's been going on around Oklahoma. It's been very popular. It's put on by a few professors here at the university. And it was so popular that we decided to do a post-conference training after our workshop. There's normally a fee for it, but it's included with the conference registration. So participants are free to attend that if they'd like after the conference. It'll be Friday afternoon.
And how much does it cost to attend, and when's the deadline?
Yes, the deadline to register is August 1st for the $50 registration fee. After August 1st, it'll be $60.
Okay, sounds like a great event, Sarah. Thanks so much. And for information on registration, just go to the SUNUP website, sunup.okstate.edu.
Well, when you judge cattle, I think that you should start by evaluating them in terms of being structurally correct and functional. And when I say that, you always want to make sure that the angle to their shoulder is correct. It needs to be laid back at a 45-degree angle. And then you study their front knee and posture, and you always want some curvature to their knee and some slope to their posture. And then in terms of functional rib shape, you always want a volume rib cage. You always want some depth. And when I say depth of body, you always want to study them in their heart or their forerib and come back to their flank. And then in terms of a stoutness thing, because these are still cattle, I think that you still want to see some pin width, some stifle width, and then you talk hip and hind leg structure, you always want that level, you always want that functional, and then you always want some circumference of bone and squareness of foot when they hit the ground. In terms of heifers, we always like to see some conditioning and fleshing ability. And then there's different entities. When you talk about bulls and steers, we're at a time of day where cattle all need to be judged the same, so they all need to be built functionally correct. Bulls, you always want to You always want to study testicular development. You always want to study stoutness and power, because you're banking on bulls to make your next year's calf crop, so that's just as important. And then in terms of market steers, you always want to see mass and power, but today you want to see it in a moderate frame, a functional build, something of efficiency where we can get these cattle to the rail and feed them. Always want to see stoutness and power, bone and foot, and balance. And I think when you're judging cattle, especially in this time, the functionally correct structural base, as well as rib depth, body shape, is always important, along with structural soundness.
Hi, welcome to Shop Stop. This week we want to talk a little bit about V-belts and some adjustment.
Okay, we've told you before about what sizes V-belts are and everything, but now we're going to talk about when you're tensioning a V-belt, and if you need to decide whether your belt is stretching or whether the pulley's worn out, or what the problem may be because of belt slippage.
One thing you may want to start with, if you don't know what the problem is to index the adjustment somewhere so you can see, okay, is it moving after I've got it tight? Is my system moving? If it's not, then the belt's likely stretching, or maybe it's worn.
Correct. And then there are several methods you can do to correct that. And one is the star washer to help add some friction between the two devices to keep it from sliding.
Another one might be just if you've got the room on the adjustment to put a bolt in behind where the thing is moved, so you can clamp that down and it's not allowed to move back.
Now if you're having belt slippage problems and your belt is tensioned properly and you know that it's not loosening on your bracket, then you may actually have some pulley wear. And if that belt is riding down in the bottom groove and rather on the sides, it can slip as well.
Yeah, you want to make sure that the sides of the belt is where the friction takes place and you actually get the pull out of it. So this is where you want to be. So if your pulley is one to look at is if the pulley is slick down on the inside, then it's obviously getting some wear down there.
So those are some tips on checking V-belts and slippage.
We'll see you next week on Shop Stop.
That'll do it for us this week. We hope you've enjoyed our visit to the Big 3 Field Days, and remember, as always, you can find us anytime at sunup.okstate.edu. You can also follow us on YouTube and other social media. Have a great week. We'll see you next time at SUNUP.